Hi, friend. Welcome to Wild and Waking, a sacred space for the woman unraveling what no longer fits, remembering the truth that's always lived inside her, reclaiming her joy, her voice, her power, and rising fully, fiercely, and without apology. I'm your host, Emily Reuschel, and together we'll explore what it means to live in alignment, lead with soul, and awaken a life of abundance, authenticity, and purpose. Let's begin. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Wild and Waking. Today we are celebrating episode number 200. 200 episodes. 200. And today I am joined by my dear darling, my love, Andrew. When the podcast hit 100 episodes under the name Gather and Growth, he joined me for episode 100 as a celebration. 2024, June of 2024. And so I/we/the community at large thought it would be fun to come on and revisit that conversation as Wild and Waking. And what a wild and waking journey we have been on since then.
I wonder what episode 300 could be called. Oh, you going to change it again? Have you already been thinking about it?
No, I'm just saying, like, on episode 200, it felt really important that we were talking about all of these like deep things related to like personal growth and parenting and marriage and all of these things that we had been through. They felt like such big, important conversations. And still to this day is like one of my most downloaded and shared episodes. And today we're going to talk about the journey that we have been on individually and together since then, which is largely, you know, unraveling everything, deconstructing everything, expanding in so many ways. And so you say, what are we going to talk about episode 300? And I laughed because I'm like, I don't know, aliens.
I don't think we have to wait for that.
I'm just saying, if that is what the past 2 years has had in store, I don't know what 2 years from now we'll be on. Anyway, Andrew, if someone has not listened to episode 100, first of all, we can encourage them to pause here and go back for context, but give the Spark Notes version of who you are, what you do, and what brought you here today.
I am a fifth-generation farmer in West Central Illinois.
This is our third take, and I've corrected you every time.
Well, we've only been 5 on the home farm, 6 in the county.
This still makes you a 6th-generation farmer.
In West Central
Illinois.
Okay.
It's technically accurate.
Okay.
Just because you moved like 5 miles over doesn't negate that entire generation.
It changes the home farm.
Okay. Anyway.
Okay. Farm with my dad, corn and soybeans. I am an only child.
That is relevant. You did not say that in our other 3,000 takes.
And I married you a dozen years ago, and we have 4 kids. And
100.
we live here.
100 kids.
And that's about how many times our house is flooded.
That is incredibly accurate.
So.
Okay, Andrew, when you think back to 2024 till now,
okay,
what's changed?
Well, we've painted the walls of the house.
It's true. Like pink and rainbow.
Lots of colors.
We had a whole nother baby. I basically died last year.
You were non-existent. And I think we've planted probably 150 trees.
That's true.
So those were all different things.
That's true.
I had to sell my Jeep because we had another kid.
That is also true. No.
I really enjoyed that Jeep.
I loved that Jeep so much.
It was fun.
No, a lot of the women, specifically in the Coven and in my masterminds or, you know, that are faithful listeners of the podcast have been very curious because they have seen me go through what we now call the Wild and Waking journey of this. Unraveling all the conditioning, all the expectations, all of the rules, all of the obligations, all of the bullshit that we've ever been told. Taking it all apart, putting it back together, kind of remembering who we are in the absence of all of that, and on a systemic level, who we were before the world taught us who to be, or before the onset of, you know, colonial patriarchy, capitalism, all of the above. And then, you know, what does it look like to really reclaim yourself, your sovereignty, your voice, your purpose, etc., and then rise into the leaders who are really changing the world. So, interestingly enough, I have been on this journey, and at the time that we recorded this, I would say it was like right after or right around the official marker where I could say like the next part of my journey began, right? Because I think in that episode we had like gone even further back to, when my personal growth journey began at the Y, when I started my business, yada, yada, yada. But what was already kind of in motion the last time we recorded was really this like entire, I guess you could call, for lack of a better word, like spiritual awakening that has been many years in the making. And I now feel like I'm a little bit more on the other side of feeling grounded in what makes sense. But what's interesting is I was going through that very personally, and so were you at the same time, but not necessarily
Not together. Not together.
And purely, mostly just from life circumstance of having a million children. And as anyone with a million children can relate, of like a lot of the conversations we're having on a day-to-day basis are related to where the kids are going, what's happening at work, what needs to be mowed or planted or cooked or cleaned or something.
Or which kid needs to go where at what time.
Yeah. And so, we had a couple moments of realization along the way of like, oh, I've been thinking about this. Okay, wait, I've been thinking about this. And I think kind of having that feeling or expectation of like, oh, what is the other person going to think about this train of thought that I've been on? I know that comes up a lot in the coven, is like, oh, I've been asking these questions, or I've been poking holes in this, or thinking about this. And my partner is either confused, resistant, semi-supportive, like, yeah, that's nice, but isn't maybe quite ready to go on their journey themselves. There's a whole span. But interestingly enough, we had been going through that journey simultaneously, but separately.
Yep.
So would you like to share a little bit about kind of how this all began for you? Maybe even like where you were starting at before.
Well, I was raised in, I guess people would call it super fundamentalist, conservative.
In the 90s.
In the 90s. That's how I would say that I was raised. Non-denominational in the 90s. So all the kids that I went to church with and the youth group with, they all went to the same Bible college. That was expectations. That was this and that. Anyway, I think it really gave me a lot of the really good foundation of Christianity, or at least a lot of understanding of the Bible from their perspective with their dogmas. So I actually ended up getting into a conversation with a friend of mine who was Catholic about 3 years ago. And he truly believes in Catholicism. And so he was trying to reach out to me
to make you Catholic?
To make me Catholic, to convert me to Catholicism. And
witchy religion.
I was a little bit, I pushed back and we talked, and it would turn out to be this beautiful conversation. There was a lot of times that we got under each other's skins. There's a lot of time that we were talking about this one thing, and the way that we used our words, we didn't understand. We really weren't communicating well. We had to go back constantly saying, okay, when I say this, this is what I mean. When I use these words mean this to me. So it was a great conversation. The two of us are very similarly like-minded. And so it was an amazing conversation. And so during that time, we talked about Christianity from the very beginning, where we would both do research and come back and say, hey, this is what I thought. Is that how you understand things? And so it turned out to be this amazing conversation. And as we were going through it, I was realizing that there's a lot of things that I was taught was dogma or tradition. He would call it tradition and I would call it dogma. And so you just realize that it was two different sides of the same story. But as we were talking about Catholicism and I was talking about not Catholicism, ended up just poking a bunch of holes that I thought were actual holes as I was diving into this and trying to look at it from a different perspective, right? Not the perspective that I grew up with. Just I was trying to look at it, the same stories from a different lens. With somebody holding my hand trying to tell me how this is how they see it. And I'm like, that genuinely doesn't make sense to me. So
do you feel like you started by trying to defend your point of view, and then the harder you try to defend your point of view, the more you could see the gaps?
I first was trying to defend myself, and then I realized that was ridiculous. Why am I defending myself over something so trivial? Like on this one or 2 points, like, does it really matter? And I realized that we were both looking at the same words and we saw it on different sides of the lens.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so you can see this, you can read the same story and you can come up with 2 different like meanings behind the story. And like, that's okay. And then when you're like, that's the reason why there's 40,000 denominations of Christianity. And you're like, well, he kept talking about absolute truth. And I'm like, well, you can't be certain
Right.
on any of this.
We are but mere little beings on a floating rock.
And he's like, no, this is what everybody has thought for hundreds of thousands of, hundreds of years, centuries, right? This is what they have all believed. They have all believed this from here, this time frame, since the first century. And I'm like, no, things change, things ebb and they flow. So yeah, as I was like at first defending, then I was saying, no, I can look at this from a different perspective to try to have common ground with this conversation. And then I was like, wait, no, I disagree with everything that he was saying from a literal point, but also from just a fundamental point of no, everything changes and they ebbs and they flow.
Mm-hmm.
And that just doesn't make sense anymore to me.
So Andrew is an Enneagram 5, which means that once he finds a special interest in something, he goes down every rabbit hole that could ever exist at all.
Yeah.
So what
That's also why this is a 5-year
journey. But what were some, okay, obviously there was this conversation that you had this like ongoing nurturance of like asking questions and defending points or questioning points. But what were some of the other trails that you were following that really led to this like total deconstruction, basically?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about Catholicism versus Protestantism, you're like, okay, how do we both interpret essentially the New Testament differently is a good way to say that. So then you could say, okay, well, maybe we both misinterpret the New Testament, but we all interpret the Old Testament correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so then you can like reread stuff in the Old Testament and you're like, wait, no. The Old Testament was written over thousands of years and they are changing their stories throughout that time as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, okay, well, I can really ultimately, I think it all came down to the fact like I was holding on to a handful of things that I was like, I can give up a lot as long as these handful of things are absolutely true. Nothing else really matters as long as these, say, 5 or 6 handful of things are absolute true. As long as nothing can touch these, then I'm okay. I'm okay. Pick your flavor of whatever. I'm good as long as I have these 5 or 6 things. And when I finally came to that realization that I'm okay with everything being wrong as long as these 5 or 6 things are right or true. And then you go back to those 5 or 6 things and realize that they start falling down kind of like dominoes, little by little by little. It felt like they were getting chipped away. And you're like, no, it's fine because I still have these 5 or 6 true things.
Yeah.
As long as I have that, I am good. And nothing, I'm okay with everything being wrong as long as I have this.
And then
when you realize that those 5 or 6 things are also not what you thought that you believed or thought that what you knew, then you're like, oh, now I have...
It's a house of cards.
I literally have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You take the bottom, as a house of cards. Everything crumbled on itself, and it crumbled so fast. So fast.
For me, I feel like all of the pieces were already there. And I already had a really I could hold a very expansive, nuanced understanding of biblical context in Christianity. I already saw a lot of, tried to make overlaps and try to make a lot of like expansiveness in my understanding of Christianity in the Bible. And what did it for me was when I started digging more into the history and the way that the Bible so intentionally had been manipulated over time, specifically for systems of power by different kings and conquest, for lack of a better word. And then it was like, okay, wait a second. If what I'm reading and has been told is the capital T truth has been systemically manipulated over time to meet the political agenda of men who want to exercise power over a population of people, it was like that combined with, what are they called collectively? It's like the Mary Magdalene text, and then there's a few other ones. I can't remember what they're called as a unit, but it's like
synoptic gospels.
Yeah, whatever they are.
Not synoptic.
Those had been removed, again, very intentionally, because they were, so much of the teaching was related to the divine within and, the union and yada, yada, yada. And it was like realizing that the version of the Bible that I had been taught had been very carefully curated over time. That was like my last domino that fell for me.
And I would say that everything you just said had nothing to do with anything that I was a part of. So that is your experience.
Yeah.
None of that was mine. And I think that's just the difference in the way that our brains work.
Yeah.
My brain would... What I hear from you is that you said all these things that are... You made it almost sound like a conspiracy to me.
I mean...
Over time, like, oh, these people have it out for you. And I'm
not saying they have it out, but I'm saying, like, they created and manipulated this as a tool.
And I would not say that. That's not how I would say it. But I could be wrong because I never looked at it in that way.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was also doing a lot more reading and research around like the systemic erasure of like earth-based spirituality, the divine feminine, goddess worship, things like that, and watching how the onset of not just Christianity, but the Abrahamic religions in total were in, positions of conquest and manipulation and, conversion by force. And so it was like just getting more of the historical context of, what those several thousand years looked like and what were some of the agendas along the way is what really like gave me my full permission to let it go.
Yeah.
Because I feel like my deconstruction was interesting because going into it, I didn't feel like I really needed to deconstruct for myself. I already had this like very, like I said, expansive, nuanced, liberal, for lack of a better word, like view of everything. I feel like I had to do more understanding and unpacking of like the collective, like religion as a system.
Yeah. And see, I was probably the exact opposite.
Well, so much of your core belief system was tethered to it. And I don't feel like mine was as much.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
In such a rigid,
Yeah.
like
I understand what you're trying
way.
to say there. Yeah.
Like I had like a colorful view, and yours was like
no.
You were given a black and white script.
Very much black and white. It's this or it's that, and there is no gray.
Yeah.
That's the type of Christianity that I was raised in. So everything was capital T truth.
Yeah.
And you could not question a thing.
Yeah. This conversation's been coming up so much in the coven. Like you can't isolate that from everything else. Like that is not just the messages that you heard on Sunday morning. That was like interwoven in the core of your identity and your belief system. That like black and white, it's truth or not. And I feel like, you had...
Well, I've always been a rebel.
I was going to say, you had already like not fully bought into that, but that is like the core of like the environment.
So I've always been a rebel without a cause. But I'm always there to push the lines of, oh, you say this is black and white. Where is that line exactly? Part of that is just, well, they always made fun of, like, we always made fun of preacher kids.
Yeah.
Growing up, because the preacher kids would be the ones that were pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
Or going well over the boundaries. And I felt like I was probably more of that PK, preacher kid. Almost, not because I had a parent that was a preacher, but because I was pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
And even if I didn't push the boundaries physically, I was pushing the boundaries mentally.
Yeah. So what happened also in tandem for this was like this expansion into spirituality, which I feel like I just continuously pushed you into the deep end for.
Well, you jumped out of one and jumped right into the other.
I don't feel like that's true.
Okay.
Because I feel like there was many years of like oscillating and like if you go back and look at the history of the podcast, you can see exactly what I was exploring when.
Yeah.
And it was like little dabbles. Because I for sure have seen and witnessed and been in relationship with people who have like gone one to the other and apply the like same
the
black and white thinking, the fundamentalist rules, the purity testing from like one belief system into another belief system. And I don't think that's true for me.
No, I'm not saying that you are that you got rid of one thing and then you filled it with something else, but yet you filled it within the same frameworks or the puzzle pieces.
No.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
I feel like it was like a very
flowy.
Yeah, like an ombre.
There you go. As like the painting and
like my office wall. And it was just, I think for me, I mean, you were reading off the book titles in one of the takes of this podcast sitting right here, but it was like as I was following different trails and getting exposed to new podcasts or new books or new people or new information, it was like I was slowly unraveling some things. Yep. And then like other things were starting to make sense. And that's where the Wild Awakening framework comes. Like you're constantly spiraling through unraveling, remembering, reclaiming, and rising.
Yes. And for me, I don't feel like it's the same. Obviously, our brains work different. And our experiences are different. So for me, I think it's much more of as I unravel something, I have to digest it very slowly. Even though like after the whole house of cards fell and it's like, okay, now here's this huge gap to fill. It was like, no, instead of going and filling the gap, it was let's continue to keep unraveling and keep
just actually thrust yourself into the void.
And keep digesting and then like processing where those parts were actually ingrained within me. So it's not like I believe this truth, and what did that mean for me in my life? So I've never wanted to I haven't filled anything back up with any of it. I've just trying to figure out where that was ingrained into me and then saying, okay, does this still hold true for my life? Like, is this a bad thing or a good thing? What do I want to change? And what am I okay with changing?
Yeah.
And
the way you're describing that doesn't feel any different.
It doesn't feel any different. No, probably not.
I think I have just, in the nature of the work that I do and the conversations that I'm having, like, I have sought more conversations and different people.
Yeah. For me, when I look at you, I'm like, you're like, oh, I just got a splinter and you took it out. And you're like, okay, let's keep going. And like, for me, it's like, well, these are like the pillars of my foundation of my understanding of who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And I just took them down and I want to stand in the same spot. And I'm looking around now at the world and being like, can I move? Do I get to move? Like, or do I still have to stay right here? And then like, okay, now I realize I don't have to stay right here. Where do I want to go? And what do I want to do about it? And figure that out. Who's that no nonsense spirituality lady? Brittany, what? Something. Anyway, she left Mormonism and then left Christianity. And she was just talking about how she went through like a
rebel phase.
Well, yeah, like an emo phase, but she had a mohawk and it was blue and like all this stuff. And like, she's like, and I allowed myself to do all these things that like I was never allowed to do. Mm-hmm. And I had like these great phases and they were a lot of fun. And I'm like, I don't feel the need to like go out and like get a tattoo and piercings and change this.
Yeah.
Everywhere. I'm not ready yet. I'm slowly
blue hair loading.
slowly rebuilding, I would say.
A question that I get a lot is like, after me doing Reiki and things like that, people are like, oh, like, what does Andrew think about this?
Yeah, I knew what Reiki was before you.
I know.
That doesn't impress me much. No, I'm not saying that. No, because your Reiki is like way cooler than the Reiki that I was told.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I have been initiated into Reiki plus.
Yeah, where I think I knew about Reiki I knew a lot about a lot of these things.
Honestly.
We have like, I'm like actually from a super crunchy family who just doesn't realize how crunchy they really are.
Such an interesting juxtaposition, truly.
They don't know.
Or they're just like it's like a circle.
Remember my grandpa gave me the water book?
Yeah.
About how like you talk to water.
Yeah.
And, like, how the water crystals change.
Yeah. And I see that book reference all the time. And I'm like, I literally own that. We've had that for a decade.
And he wanted to write him a letter and have him come to the United States to talk.
He wanted you to go to Japan and meet him. And you were like, Grandpa, that guy's...
I'm like, after he was asking me about it for so long, I finally looked up and I'm like, oh, thank goodness he was dead for 10 years. Like, this isn't happening.
Yeah.
But, like, and then my aunt using a pendulum to tell us the sex
gender
of our
children. Baby.
Like,
yeah.
Like, there's a lot of super crunchy things.
Yeah.
So, none of this is weird. You haven't scared me off yet.
Well, and to be fair, you do listen to the podcast every week. So you have like gotten microdose of all these conversations alongside me.
Yeah. And hearing them in between a kid screaming for a snack.
Like, hey, so about this house clearing.
So, yeah, I think that you and I went through a similar obstacle course. We did it very differently and we did them by ourselves. And then we like met each other on the finish line and we're like, oh, hey, when did you get here?
Yeah.
And we're like, I've been here the whole time.
Yeah.
Really? I didn't see you. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, there was one night we were out for dinner and you were talking about like Norse mythology and like Viking culture that you had been researching. And I'm like, oh, that sounds a lot like, I don't even remember what I was referencing, but there was like similar things like going down different rabbit holes that it's like, oh, that's like, I'd been doing like a lot of matriarchy research and like you had been looking at some like Native American stuff. And there was just, there's been a lot of overlap in what we've been exploring.
Yeah.
The other day, my jaw hurt so freaking bad. And Andrew goes, what are you not saying? What are you holding you back from saying? What are you not saying that you need to or something?
That's not.
And I was like, okay, witch boy. It is what you said. Something along those lines.
I had a lot of comments before that.
Oh, shut up. It turns out it was actually just super out of whack and my chiropractor fixed it. But
yeah, why are you being held back? Like,
yeah.
Being held back.
Yeah.
Well, even going from like the Gather and Growth podcast into the Wild Awakening, you was holding your tongue back a lot before you made that transition.
Yeah. Yeah, I put up in my stories, like, what should I ask Andrew? And someone said, what changes have you noticed in me? Which I feel like is a really loaded question for the past couple of years because I was actually a zombie last year.
Yeah.
And I'm still postpartum. So even though I've been going through this like really beautiful and crazy and messy existential journey, I've also physically been going through a lot. So I don't think it's fair to be like, oh, Emily is so at peace and enlightened.
No, but I feel like you beforehand, and I want to say pre-Gather and Growth and all the way through Gather and Growth, you were trying to get your voice out there, but yet you didn't want to like rock the boat too much.
Yeah.
You wanted to rock the boat a little bit, but like because you didn't want to have the same boring conversations.
Yeah.
But then you started just reading more and you're like, hey, that was interesting. What do people think about this? And then you kind of I remember there was like a week and a half where you're like, I can't wait I just at the point where I need to say this and it needs to come out. And like, I remember you crying in bed. I'm like, oh my gosh, just say the thing. But you couldn't let yourself come up to it and let yourself get it out.
I couldn't even name what it was. Like everything.
It was everything.
You're like, what is it? And I was like, I don't know. That is like that is the defining moment that I say started this journey.
And then once it finally came out, I'm like, once you finally got it out, and it took you a while to get it out, but when it finally came out, it was just like you finally was at peace. Yeah. Like your body almost was like at peace because you stopped fighting yourself.
Yeah.
You finally gave yourself permission.
Well, I think I had done enough, like a lot of really intentional healing work. And a lot of, I think...
Was Gather and Growth stage, was that while you were doing like a lot of therapies and stuff?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Therapy was Gather and Growth. Okay. But I just mean like there was probably a year that I was going through so much within myself and I was letting pieces of that out in the podcast. But I also very much had this like very deep fear and insecurity of like, ultimately rejection,
Yeah,
right?
Me being married to you for 12 years, I still would have been like, that's not you at all. Like, I wouldn't have even pegged you for that.
No, but I think now being able to look back on it, it was really like I was within myself going through so much of anything that we assume someone else is thinking is so often a projection of our own inner world. And I think a lot of that was actually me wrestling through the morality of like, am I bad if I say and do and believe these things?
Okay.
So there was like the dual thing, right? Like we live in a very small town. Gather and Growth, this community has been built primarily with women who live in small towns, rural communities. And at the time, I held this really strong perception of like, I'm an alien. Nobody understands me. If I say the things that I want to say,
You are.
Shut up. Starseed. Anyway, if I say, these things, then like everyone is going to be mad at me because it is like so different than these people that I'm in relationship with. And, anyone who's listened to the podcast for any amount of time has heard me talk about this ad nauseum. But the more I started saying the thing, the more people were like, oh my God, me too. Oh my gosh, me too. Oh my gosh, me too. And, that's where the coven was born, from this, collective of women who were asking the same kind of questions, who felt really alone in their awakenings and in their unraveling, who were doing deconstructing, who were exploring more of the witchy and the woo and the all of this. And so that was for sure a limiting belief, but I think something I really had to navigate to understand what it's like to go through that journey. Because anytime your identity and your belief system is evolving, especially when you are unraveling the threads of your identity, it is incredibly disorienting. And so I think if I had come into that with like 1000%, like, I don't give a fuck confidence, like, I wouldn't have the understanding that I do to like really be able to sit in the darkness and the shadow and the messy evolution that a lot of women go through, and men, and I think we're seeing that now more than ever as we just like look outside and the world is on fire and people are starting to ask bigger questions than just this is what you should believe rules they were handed.
Yeah. I think the world's always been on fire, though.
I do believe that's true.
I think the times are different, though. Probably mostly because of the amount of people that we can have communications that we didn't have beforehand.
I also agree with that.
So, yeah. I mean, I agree with you.
Okay, another question that someone had is if someone feels the beginning of a journey, or I'm actually like correcting myself. I know a lot of women who are listening to this podcast at this point are on this journey with me, and they are feeling tension with their spouse, not understanding, being resistant to, being like potentially critical of, or really afraid of this like awakening, becoming, questioning.
You're talking about resistance to change.
Absolutely.
You're going to call it an awakening. You're going to call it this. You're going to call it that. But what it is, it's resistance to change. Because now you are changing this. And if that changes, then now you're changing. Everything else is up for grabs to be able to change. If you're going to change this one thought process, then now you are now opening up the floodgates to change everything else.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone whose partner is
I don't
going
know.
through
That's
that?
Scary. Because that's essentially what you're saying. Like, if you're saying, like, I know that we collectively beforehand that we used to think this, or we used to, or at least have this grounding connection that was similar, that binded us together.
Mm-hmm.
If you get rid of that, then you're leaving your significant other with, if that is going to fall apart, then everything else is potentially on the chopping block to fall apart. And that's, everything can now change. If you change one fundamental thing, you're now opening up the floodgates for everything to change.
Well, and to draw it back to what you said, like, there were these capital T truths that you were like, I'm okay with everything else having
Yes.
but
Yes.
like, if this is not there, then what is there?
Correct.
And one thing we talk about is that most people will not go through the process of an identity evolution that involves them having to look in the mirror and reckon with like core ingrained belief systems, because it is visceral.
Well, it's hard.
And so hard.
It's easier to turn on the TV or look at your phone or go play sports.
Yay, sports.
Or, just leave your family for Mother's Day and go farm. Like, it's way easier.
It's fine.
But no, I mean, you're asking people to do the hard thing and saying, while you go and do something hard, guess what? Your entire life could change.
Yeah.
And what if they like their life?
Some people don't want to.
Or I think the other thing that you don't realize, a superpower of men is that they are very capable of living with things being wrong. Oh, yeah. Like, everything can be wrong, and men can live with it and be like, it's fine. Like, I can live with that.
Yeah.
As long as they can still hold on to these pillars of truth.
Yeah.
And if you are going to turn around and potentially knock down one pillar of truth, then all of them can be knocked down, and then everything that is on fire, nothing's okay.
So,
what do I have to say to those women?
Yeah.
That's a really hard thing.
It reminds me, I think we talked about this in the last episode we recorded together, not in relation to this, but there was a lot of questions around like, what was it like for you when I started my personal growth journey? And I remember you talking about like, it was really scary because suddenly you were wanting things and being more intentional and like desiring things that I'd never seen you care about before. And you had this fear of like, are you going to outgrow me? Like, are you going to do all of these things and I will not be relevant? Which I am hearing you basically say the same thing, but an even more core belief level.
Core belief level, yeah.
So to put words in your mouth, I think a part of that conversation can be like, I need to go down this path of exploration. I don't need you to understand, but here's what it would look like to support me.
That would be a good way to say it. Because I don't have to, even no matter what route you even go on, I don't have to believe the same things that you believe. I just have to support you on your journey.
Well, that's a bigger conversation too.
Why?
Well, just we don't have to agree on
conversation.
Well, I know that, but you would be shocked how many men are not okay with that.
To just support their wives?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or be nice to them, honestly, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, I just want to say sarcastic book titles that are right behind you in response to that.
We'll start with When God Was a Woman.
No matter what, I think supporting you is the easier part.
Yeah.
Even if I disagree with you or what you say or what you do or what you think, I'm like, I don't need to interject into your life to tell you that you're wrong.
And at no
it's your life.
Point did either of us feel like we needed to convince the other one of anything or convert them one way or another.
No.
So even just like laying that of like, I'm exploring this.
And I want to be like, cool, tell me what you're hearing and thinking, because I want to hear about it, because I want to see where you're going. And if it's really interesting, I might want to dive into reading more and understanding more about it, or I'm going to take a little bit of piece of this or piece of that. But supporting you has always kind of been the easier thing for me, though, I think.
Well, to me, it's like no different than when I get done reading a romantasy book and I just want to tell you everything. And you're like, that's great for you. I don't want to read that, but I love that for you.
I'm glad you're happy. But I am dying inside listening to you talk to me about it.
You know, I have listened to you talk about trees a lot over the past 2 years.
You are probably dying inside, and that is fine.
I know you're doing it for me.
I'm doing this for you.
I care a little bit less about the placement of every species on the 40-acre property.
And why?
As you do. And the specific location in connection to fish habitat spacing. But I know that you're building me a forest because that's what I want.
Well, fish habitats. Could be a podcast episode.
Part 2.
Just building fishing habitats and spawning areas could be a podcast episode. That's actually multiple podcast episodes.
You know what?
Just in there.
You should start a podcast. I already got the setup.
No, just watch YouTube.
Start a YouTube channel.
Please no.
That sounds like a lot of
takes
work.
like so much time.
It does take so much time, which is a limited resource in the Reuschel house.
Here is what I did. If you want to know why, go find out for yourself. That's my advice.
Okay, Andrew, we have added one more child to the mix since 2024. What's that been like?
It's like having 3 kids and then you're drowning and someone hands you a baby. It's like, good luck. Do you need anything? Yeah, take a kid. Oh, that's nice.
Oh, your hands are so full.
Yeah, you think?
It's so cute.
Okay, so I said support, but I think support for me is easy. I support you no matter what, but that's easier for me. Maybe that's hard for others.
I do think that's hard for people, but I think you can be specific in the way that you ask for it.
Okay, so then
do you want them to listen to you? Do you want them to at minimum at least not criticize? Because I hear a lot of that.
Okay.
Of like immediate critical judgment when women are bringing up the things that they're thinking about.
Maybe they're not a safe person to talk to at this time.
It's so true. Not every person that you are in close relationship with is the sounding board when you're asking questions like this.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. What else you got?
Well, we could go on down a million rabbit holes.
Okay.
Our children are actually on their way home.
But they're not here yet. So. What else you got?
What else do we got? What's next?
Birthing your story.
Oh my gosh. You have started working with my friend Anne-Marie.
Oh, she's great.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
10 out of 10. And she is an intuitive therapist, energy worker, spiritual guru. She kicks ass, right? And a lot of people, when I talk about how you started working with her, they're like, oh, they just think it's the coolest thing ever. So what prompted you to want to start doing something like that?
I don't remember.
Okay. Great conversation.
There's a lot of build-up.
Great talk.
There's a lot of build-up. But I did listen to your podcast, and I remember Anna-Marie on their podcast, and I was like, oh, of anyone that you've like had on your podcast, blah, 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 I think I connected with Anna-Marie the most. So I ended up actually like reached out to you and told you that I want to talk to her or whatever, and then reached out to her. The first time that I talked to her was awesome because she's like, okay, I did all this energy work. Are you ready for it? And like, she just like word vomited. And I was like, this is awesome. You did all this great work for me.
You like took notes. Thank you. Thank you for talking to my ancestors. This was so cool.
Thank you for all of this energy work that you did for me. Thank you. And she's like, okay, like that was it. And I'm like, okay, like I want to do more because I had to do nothing. And I was like, this is awesome. So we signed up for more. And I was like, she's going to do it all. I'm here to take notes. And I'm like, I'm just here for the journey. I'm the trailer. And she's like, okay, now you're the driver. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, you have to do this, this, and this. I'm like, I don't know. I want to go back to how it was last time when you did all the work. And I just was like,
you notes.
Told me about it. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And she's like, yeah, no, you're driving now. And I was like, dang it. So that was harder. A lot less fun. But no, it absolutely like zonks you out. Energy work does. I mean, destroys you. But one of my ancestors is actually my great grandfather. And he was very dominant on the farm. And oh yeah, we've had to do a lot of work with a lot of part of his mindset or part of his consciousness or spirit or whatever you want to say is so interwebbed and so connected to the farm. And there's just very specific things that he is dominating the mindset of the farming operation still to this day. Which was so interesting.
Like so much in your
day-to-day
psyche and consciousness around like worth and time and work and joy in taking time for yourself, or like so many of these things that you have been actively deconstructing around like your relationship to the farm and work-life balance, like the role that the farm plays in our family, etc. And you guys have been really going in and finding like how deeply that was generationally tethered, which I think is very pertinent in agriculture, and has been really interesting having these conversations with you after working with her and just, other friends who do ancestral type work, how deeply rooted that is, especially for farmers and people in agriculture, because you cannot find like a demographic of people that are as ingrained with like work, family, land.
So it was funny. Anna Marie said that she had like one ancestor that was really dug her heels in real deep, and it was like a grandmother of Italian descent. And I was like, well, you don't know anything about German Lutherans.
Farmers.
Farmers. Oh, so my parents are talking about remodeling their kitchen. And they brought over one of my dad's cousins. My dad's 49 out of 49 first cousins. So one of my dad's first cousins was over at the house. And she was sitting there and talking about the house when she was really little, that my great-grandfather, that he would sit in this spot over here and all the grandkids would like climb on top of him. Right. And so she's like telling this really beautiful story, and she points like to right where he used to always sit. And I'm like, oh, that's where I sit every single day and eat lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so there still was that, like, that connection is still there. Like, and it's a daily connection. And while it sounds small, it is still there.
It was a long and winding story.
Yeah, it's fun though.
It is so fun. It's been very cool.
So that's one thing that has happened.
And I feel like it has...
I also think the deconnecting from the farm, or trying to...
Decentering the farm
helps with having 4 kids.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think that in general, the deconstruction that you have done and combined with the work you've been doing with Anna Marie and just your own stuff has like, I won't say completely, but has like evolved the way that you parent in your relationship with each of our kids too. Just when you started understanding like generational expectations and like rigid belief systems and like what you were, which we all do as parents, but like what you were imposing on certain kids as expectations, and that was like misaligned with their like natural ways of being, and like the resistance you had around that for years and years and years.
So I always am going to think back to when we first got married. Everyone was like, never go to bed mad. Right?
Yeah.
And like they said that, I grew up with that so much that was like a core family. That was like a core thing. Like, no matter what, you can't go to bed mad.
Which is great, because nothing says settling an argument like being pissed and tired at midnight.
Yeah. And I remember you like telling me that and be like, no, but we can't go to bed mad. And you're like, I do not want to talk to you ever again.
Yeah.
I will talk to you in the morning after I get some sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then you would turn her over and go to sleep, and I would sit there and be mad and be like, this is not what you're supposed to do.
Mad that I could go to bed mad?
Yeah. And then like so that's like one of those, like, that was a core belief that I had about marriage.
Yeah. And my belief was, I love you enough to not have a conversation that's going nowhere, where we're both going to stay and do things that we regret. I would like to talk to you after because everything is different in the morning.
I get it. No, I believe you. And yes. But my point is that was a pillar of expectation.
Yeah. In marriage.
That got removed.
Yeah.
And after that, you're like, oh, well, how many more of them need to be there?
Yeah.
And then once you crumble a few, then you're like, I can crumble more.
Yeah.
If I need to. Like some of them, like, if we both mutually agree that needs to be there, then it needs to be there.
Yeah. Well, I think a huge part of our 30s has been just understanding like what expectations we were living into that we never even chose.
Yes. Like going to bed mad.
Yeah. And then being like,
wait, no.
And then I think you apply that principle to anything of like,
everything.
This was something that I was handed. Do I think this is even relevant or true? Do I want to continue to live by this? Is there something else to replace it with? Or how do I let it go? I mean, I think that is actually the process that you and I have both gone through over the past couple of years in this journey of like taking it all apart and putting it back together.
So that's what this entire conversation is about.
Yeah.
In our 30s.
In our 30s. And what's cool is like once you flex the muscle of doing that, it stops feeling so overwhelming. Like now I can get new information, hear new ideas, and be like, like I think once you go through the practice of doing this, like everything just feels less overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because it's like anything and nothing can be true. And I get to decide what makes sense to me and how I move through the world. And I no longer feel stressed about what it looks like to take something apart and put it back together.
Or to sit in somebody else's seat.
Yeah. Andrew, what does growth look like for you in this season?
Oh, gosh. I just want to go to bed. With nobody crying.
Good answer.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on Wild and Waking. I love you.
I love you.
Hey friend, I hope this conversation sparked something real in you. Something that feels like truth, curiosity, or the courage to keep becoming. If this episode resonated, I'd love for you to share it. Take a screenshot, post it to your stories, or send it to one of your friends. You can always find me over on Instagram at Emily Reuschel, where I love continuing these conversations and hearing your takeaways. Truly, your DMs are one of my favorite parts of podcasting, so don't be shy. I'd love to reflect and connect with you over there. I'm so grateful to be surrounded by a community of women who ask hard questions, sit in the discomfort of the unknown, blaze new paths forward, and ultimately come home to their wild and waking selves. See you next week.